I have a little bit of a background in AI, artificial intelligence, more from a personal curiosity perspective. So I asked Henry, where does AI play, or where can AI play a role to help level the playing field for some of these small to medium not-for-profits, and enable them to focus on scaling their efforts and focus on the higher value tasks and improve outcomes. So he and I started that conversation, and that's kind of the origin story of this. The origin story of this webinar. So what I did was I called a former colleague of mine and asked her for some help. She called one of her colleagues, or a person she's comfortable with, to help us frame this conversation today, to help us with that conversation. So I pulled together Marilyn Markham, who's the VP of AI Automation and Strategy at Amex GBT, and Amma Gaddy, who is the founder, executive director at Culture Encounters. So Marilyn and Amma, thank you very much for joining us and helping us sort some of this stuff out. I'll give you a little bit of time. Can you introduce yourselves and just give us a little background? Thanks.
Do you want me to start? Okay.
Go ahead, Marilyn.
Yes,
hi,
please.
Hi, everyone. So as Charlie said, I'm Marilyn Markham. I work at American Express Global Business Travel, and I'm the Vice President for Artificial Intelligence and Automation Strategy. And I'm also the former head of the board for Culture Encounters, which is my link to the nonprofit world. I'm based in Virginia. And I would say that my AI journey started a little over a year ago now. AI has been in existence much longer than that, but generative AI definitely made it cool and of interest to the whole world in ways that former iterations of the technology never had. So I'm here to share some of my expertise in this topic and our learnings as a company over the time, in hopes that it will help you too.
All right, I'll go. Hi, I am Amma Gaddy. I am the founder and executive director of Culture Encounters. We are a small nonprofit based in Richmond, Virginia, and our mission is to ignite cultural curiosity, knowledge, and appreciation within the region, with hopes to expand nationwide. My interaction with AI was pretty out of necessity. I actually refer to AI as my personal assistant because I cannot afford one yet. And so that is how I use AI. And we're going to delve into that in a little bit. But as a small nonprofit, I have found this tool very, very, very valuable, because it does help me scale and also ground me and put in the structures that we need to put in place for a smaller organization like mine.
Great. Thank you, Marilyn and Amma. I really appreciate you being here. For those on the call, if you have questions, and we'll try to get to them, please put them in the chat box. So go to chat and put your questions there. I'll be monitoring those as we continue this webinar, and we'll try to pull some of those out to address during today's call. So the first question I have for both of you, Amma and Marilyn, is, ChatGPT really gets a lot of the attention, but there's a lot of AI tools and applications out there. What are ways that people may be using AI that they might not be aware of? So whoever wants to take that one first.
All right, I'll go. So I think people don't realize that even on Instagram or Facebook, creating a reel uses AI, right? And so I often go to that first, because most of us are on social media and we do use AI in so many forms. And now Facebook, I think, is very explicit with AI. So you could make a post and it will give you the option to use AI to generate the text for your post. I think in places like Canva, I use Canva a lot for marketing. And so that you could put in like 5 words, and AI in Canva will help you create a flyer or, some kind of graphics for whatever it is that you're looking for. We use Grammarly all the time. And so Grammarly is one of those, that we use without even thinking twice about.
I would add to that on this call today, you'll notice that at the bottom of the screen, there's an AI companion for Zoom. And if you've never used it and you use Zoom as a company, I'd encourage you to do so, because it's able to catch you up if you join a meeting late. It can give you summaries, so no one needs to be taking minutes. It's just a nice way that it's been integrated in our everyday tools. Another one is Google Search. If you've used Google to search for anything, you've seen that today it now offers you a summary option that uses AI. And I think the big message here is that generative AI is going to be inserted in many of your everyday applications. And so it's not anything that you need to be afraid of. Artificial intelligence is an extension of existing technology that we've had, where we've used machines, computers, to try and discern patterns, to learn to recognize pictures. And now the next evolution is, now that it knows how to recognize, it's also able to generate video, pictures, text. So it's not anything to be afraid of, and you're not late to the game. Personal adoption of generative AI was maybe last year when it was new and everyone rushed to use ChatGPT. When it comes to companies and enterprise, the adoption year is actually starting now. So you're not late. It's just joining the fray with everyone, and the excitement and the hype is real.
That's great. I'm going to delve into adoption for a little bit. And Amma, you mentioned kind of in your opening there, you're using it. You're using AI right now. Can you share with us where you are? A couple of things. I think you mentioned it a little bit, but I want you to kind of underline it. Why did you kind of move in or be an early adopter of AI, and what are the things that you found it most useful for?
Yeah. So my need was for me to work efficiently and relatively faster, because I usually with administrative stuff, I'm the one-man show. And we have 7 volunteers who help with the work, but I find that I get to be the chief everything officer. And because I'm being the chief everything officer also means that sometimes there are things that I don't know. And so because I don't know, I rely heavily on AI to help me figure out and navigate the spaces that I'm not too comfortable with. And so, for example, I would use AI to generate, to be my grant reviewer, because I don't have a development person yet. And so I would, like if on days when we would write grants in the past, I would just copy and paste all the things I've written and ask ChatGPT to review it, or if I were doing a post on social media, I am not really social media savvy as I should be. And my 17-year-old will attest to that. Every time I post something, she will cringe. And so I rely on AI to help me, word it the way that the algorithm might like, or that people might relate to better than if I were writing a thesis on Instagram.
Got it. And have you found Amma, that it actually has allowed you to focus on those higher value type activities?
It does. Absolutely. It saves me time and effort, and it also frees me up then to be able to go to that extra meeting or networking event that I really wanted to go. Otherwise, I would be stuck behind the computer for hours getting things done. But to know that I can go in and say, give me data or give me information that I need to prepare to go into a meeting, saves me time, because I can get that done in a few minutes. I have my talking points and off I go to my meeting.
Got it. One of the things we had talked about during our prep session, so I'm just going to throw this out there as well. The thing to me in the not-for-profits I've dealt with, and particularly folks like yourself and Henry, there's a passion there. And one of the questions we had asked early on amongst ourselves, how do you lose that passion if you're using artificial intelligence, or how can you translate that passion? I think you and Marilyn both had excellent answers to that. Would you mind kind of expanding on that? Amma, you first, and then Marilyn.
Yeah, So I think that when people think AI, people think, oh, they're taking over and taking over our world and our jobs and all of that. I see AI more of a tool that enhances the work that I do. So it's not replacing me as a person. There's been instances where AI will spill out something and I'm thinking, this is not quite what it was, quite what I was thinking. So I'm still very much in control. And I think Marilyn will touch on that later, that it's what you put in, right? It's pretty much, what you put in is what you get. And so I keep having to query it over and over and over until I get it the way I think I want it. But then that's not the finished product. I will still have to copy and paste and then put my own touch or my own spin to it. So for example, like one day I had put in a query about cultural diversity and the importance of cultural diversity because that's the work we do. And it gave me all these points, but then it started talking about it in terms of going to a school. And I wasn't talking to a school, I was talking to a group of businessmen, and I needed it to kind of go in the direction. And I kept feeding it more, and I felt that it wasn't doing quite what it was that I wanted. And so it's, you have to play with it. You kind of have to guide it into what exactly you want it to do for you.
Got it.
Yeah, I'd agree completely. There is really no substitute for your passion, for your vision, and for the goals that you have for yourself. It's never going to guess that for you. What you can do is use AI to be more eloquent about how you go about expression, your passion, or your vision. And even in that effort, as Amma was saying, there's a lot of guidance required. And I think we'll be touching on how do you write instructions for AI to then execute. You still need to be very clear on the outcomes that you would like to see, and then be able to express them in the same way that you would if you had a contractor step into your company today and you wanted them to do a specific piece of work for you, you would have to give them a full briefing. And AI is the same. It doesn't just appear with the knowledge of things. It knows a lot of stuff, but you provide the context of application, the style of application, and what you expect from it. And at the end of the day, what it provides you is not a finished product. You're going to need to touch it and tweak it and make it your own, because if you use it long enough, you'll see that it starts sounding a little bit generic in the way that it writes. And very soon you become a little detector of AI. And when others use AI, you can be like, you did not write that yourself. It's not human enough. It's very scripted. So definitely AI is not about to replace you as a business owner. It might help you to fulfill some of the jobs that are missing, like Amma was saying, but it still requires you to provide so much guidance.
It's I think that. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Amma.
No, go. I just adding on to what Marilyn said real quickly. The fact that I like that Marilyn used the word eloquence, because personally, I am originally from Ghana. So when I first came here, one of the first things I noticed is that in writing, I tend to go in passive tenses, versus active form of writing. And so what AI does for me is it will pick up my spelling of, let's say, color. Americans would spell it COLOR, when in Ghana we were spelling it COLOUR, So it would help me with the language and making it more suitable for the audience I'm trying to reach.
Got it. I think this is a really good segue to, and Marilyn, this one's for you, kind of the queries or the prompt piece of it. It sounds like there's a lot of importance on what you ask and how you ask it. Can you go into kind of, I'll call it prompt engineering or kind of best practices on that, if you don't mind, Marilyn?
Sure thing. So if you log into, let's say, ChatGPT, if you haven't used it yet, I strongly encourage you, just log into it. It doesn't bite. The first thing it's going to ask you for is, what is your starting prompt? A prompt is really just your instructions. It's what you would give to your intern, etc. But the way you write it to get the most out of generative AI is you typecast it like you would an actor for a play. You start by telling it what it is. Like, you are an expert marketer. with a tenure of whatever. Because it actually, if you say you're a junior marketer or an expert marketer, the quality of the work you get output varies widely. It really gets into character. The next thing you do is you tell it, what is the task that you're going to be asking it to perform for you? I want you to help me perfect my mission statement, or I need you to customize this mission statement for a specific audience. Then you also need to make sure that it speaks with your brand voice. So you'd need to describe your tone of voice. Maybe you are a nonprofit that is doing, I don't know, let's say your culture encounters. And so you're speaking to people who may or may not be fluent English speakers, and you need to make sure that your English level is very accessible, but you also want it to be optimistic and upbeat. So you have to use all those adjectives when you say you're going to write for me or you're going to help me write something to make sure that it conveys your energy. If you have a nonprofit that's helping with bereavement, you don't really want it to be upbeat and fun. You want it to be more contemplative and more grounded. So things like that, you have to express it as part of your prompt, as you would if an actor was stepping onto the stage and you would tell them, your tone of voice is this. This is your voice and this is who you are. Now, in addition to that, you need to set the scene, right? What is the context within which this actor is performing its role? So that involves saying who you are, what your organization is, and what it does, so that when it gives you an answer, it can make sense for your company. Make sure that you give as much information as you can around this. Then comes the actual task. Depending on what you're going to do, you'll either give it like bullet points and it's supposed to write for you, or full text and it's supposed to optimize for you. If you're trying to create a post for social media, you might feel it interesting to make sure you add some information about making sure that you want it to be optimized for search engines. And you may say just, make sure that what you write is optimized for search engines. It may do a good job, but sometimes you have to go one level lower and actually say things like, please suggest 10 hashtags that would be great for this piece of text. And this is something that your social media expert would do naturally, but if this is not your cup of tea, you can just ask it to provide and suggest, and then you do the selection. If you're wondering what are some keywords that will drive more traffic to your post, you can also ask it, am I using the right keywords for this? And because the AI was built using the internet, it actually knows these things, which seems odd, but it just does. And it will suggest to you specific terms to be used, hashtags that you may not have thought of, and that you can then include. And so any additional information you provide it works, and it's not a one-shot success. It will start, you'll give it everything, it'll give it a first try. If you like some things, you can say, oh, I like this part and that part, but I don't like this. I feel it's too much, fill in the blank. I'd like it to be less like this. I'd like it to include this, and hit enter. And then it'll pick what it did, revise it, and give you an alternative. And so I think they call it few shots or one-shot requests. Expect to do a few shots to get to the best result that you can get out of it. And at some point, you do need to step back from what it's doing, pick it up, and then you go perfect it on your own. Because if you keep asking it a bit more of that, a bit less of this, you find that it strays away from an original suggestion that actually was pretty good. So you'll see it yourself when you try using it, that there is a limit to iterating with AI. And it's sometimes easier for it to give you either the groundwork or the polish. But at some point, you're going to have to step in and do some of the work yourself as well. Is that helpful?
So it is for me, Marilyn. Hopefully it is for the folks, so we can get some thumbs up or thumbs, sideways on the participants. There are two things you mentioned there. One was give it as much information as you can. I think there's some caveats, right, with regards to the type of information you want to share. Can you kind of go into that a little bit?
So first of all, let's just start by saying that AI is not free. If it's free, you're paying with your data. So when you sign up to these AI engines, do not just click through the terms and conditions and let it go. Read them, because some of these engines, they're learning all the time to perfect their product. And you may not want your data to become part of its knowledge base. And so to avoid that, you might need to go for a paying option, which gives you the first change of the terms of conditions where there is some level of privacy that is guaranteed to you, which may be good. Do not put in there any personal information, phone numbers, date of birth, social security numbers, credit cards. Don't do that. There's no need for that. Usually you can fake it by just calling them John Doe, Jane Doe, if you need to know where to place someone's name, but just don't give it really private and personal information, because once it's gone in there, there's no easy way to retrieve it, if at all. So just don't do that. I would say that just be mindful of the fact that they are public platforms. They are unfortunately very much in the limelight, which means that hackers also have their eye on them to see how to break them. And that is absolutely normal. All technology, when it comes out first, good and bad actors both try to break it to make sure that the creators make it more robust. Unfortunately, when they break it, they extract information that may be your information, and you don't want that to happen. So just don't put it in there.
And there was something else you mentioned. It you know, chat at least ChatGPT, which is the one I'm most familiar with, Marilyn. It's trained to a certain date, right? So it's not necessarily current to today's date with regards to the information. Is that correct?
That's correct. You can ask it point blank, up to when are you trained, and it will tell you. Most of the engines out there are trained up till 2022, which means that anything that happened between now and then may not be fresh. Sometimes it replies to you and says, you should double check because my information is old. But sometimes it also just will tell you things in full confidence, and it's inaccurate. There are search engines that are AI enabled that use current internet data to supplement the information, and then you can actually get accurate responses that use current information. I would also recommend that you don't rely on AI to confirm to you the legality of things you're trying to do. You should use real people whose job it is to do that. If you have legal counsel, ask your legal counsel whether the thing you're trying to write or the terms you're trying to approve are good for you. If you're trying to get crafty with your taxes or your financials, generative AI is actually very poor at mathematics. It doesn't make sense, but the reason is it's because it's trained to speak on language, not maths. If you really want a system that helps you do data analytics, don't use generative AI, actually use a data analytics platform to do that. You can ask it simple questions. I had one recently. We had a survey and I plopped all of my answers and said, how many survey participants did I have? And it got it wrong. And I said, why did you get it wrong? And it said, well, various reasons. And it started pulling points. It said, one is human error. The second one is lack of reviewing my work, etc. And I said, but you're not human. And then it replied to me and said, you know what? You're so right. I apologize. I should do better. What was that about? It's very random when it comes to mathematics. I really do not recommend. But for all other things that are just text manipulations, it actually does a great job.
Great. Back to you for a couple things here. We talked about, kind of Henry's initial setup in my piece, being able to get to those higher value activities, and some of the scaling challenges the smaller and medium size not-for-profits have, things like board development or things like that. Can you give us some specific examples of how you've used it to kind of overcome some of those challenges? Because I know you are one of the smaller organizations and building gradually. And can you give us some examples?
Yeah, absolutely. So let me start with board governance. One of the things when we first established the board, well, to where it is today, was that I had a hard time trying to figure out which roles people should play, especially with the board. So we run a 2-year term with our boards. And so with the new recruitment that we did, I kind of wanted a place where people knew exactly what their roles would be, but then I needed to understand what their roles were. And so I used ChatGPT for that. I literally just queried and asked, what role should we specifically look at and what we should, like which roles we should fill, like the treasurer, what should he be doing, or what should she, the secretary, or whoever else be doing, the roles they need to play. And someone would say that information is online. But I needed to know for myself, coming from a place of being the founder and the executive director, exactly what I should expect people and what those metrics will look like as far as measuring how well we are performing as a board. We are not quite there yet, but it was also a place where I could just brainstorm what I was looking for my board. But another way we've really used AI lately is from program development. And so as a small nonprofit, we're trying out different programs and looking at what works, what sticks, what people are open to, what's making the greatest impact. And we hold on to those programs. The ones that are not doing as well as we want, we let them go. But so in developing the program, most of the time it's coming from my head and I just want to make sure they make sense, So then I would go into ChatGPT and say, okay, this is the program, put in the whole idea and say, how would we measure this? How do we monitor this program to make sure that it's doing what it needs to do? So somehow it's kind of what Henry would do. It's what, ChatGPT is guiding me in doing that because truth be told, as a small nonprofit with tight budget, we cannot afford, some of these things. Another way it's really helped me, for example, is recently we just rolled out a new workshop. And in this workshop, we're talking about cultural curiosity and what that means in the workplace, in a school. But I also had someone design that workshop, but I took that information, put it in ChatGPT just to see if it makes sense, And so having someone or a tool to brainstorm with has been the biggest ways that I have used it to scale and to grow. Our strategic plan was done by a committee on our board. But then again, I still took that, threw it into ChatGPT, trying to see what loopholes and things that we might have forgotten or overlooked in creating something like that, because we had never created a strategic plan up until that point. And so it helps me brainstorm. It also looks out for things that I may be missing on my day-to-day work. So.
That's great. I know, Marilyn, on your current role, there's, you have AI, I think it's automation in your current role. There's operational efficiencies associated with that, some of the things you're working on, right?
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, so it sounds like as far as some of those higher value, being able to focus on some of those scale items that Henry brought up, and also being able to focus your time on those higher value. Those are two things that we're able to do, or at least help. And this is a question, we had a prep question on, but it also came through on the chat. Thank you very much for whoever put that in the chat, related to kind of the pitfalls. Sounds like there's a lot of opportunity. Some caveats that you mentioned, Marilyn, with regards to sharing personal data. What are some of the pitfalls? I know you mentioned it's not good with data and don't rely on it for legal advice, but what are some of the other pitfalls? And then, Amma, what were some of the surprises you saw that you went, oh my?
So I think the first pitfall is just riding the hype wave. There is so much hype around AI, and there's also a lot of misinformation about how it's taking over the world, and people are replaying, the Terminator. This is not where we are in the evolution of the technology, okay? I would say, instead of running after using AI for everything as a magic bullet, stay super focused on what are your business objectives, and actually go from your business objective, asking the question, is this something where AI helps me? Like Amma was saying, if you're trying to develop your board because you feel like they could be contributing more to the success of your enterprise, you can ask AI to help brainstorm with you how that may come about and how you would describe that and define that. And you don't just go on the fact that ChatGPT is really good at doing voices. I mean, unless your nonprofit is telling stories to children, it's not helpful for you that it's good at voices. So I would say stay super business focused, but also don't forget that there are other tools out there, technology tools and others, that allow businesses to function and have done so for many years. So because Gen AI is the new thing, doesn't make it the only thing. If what you need is a customer relationship management system to keep track of your donors and your participants and your volunteers and everything, get that. Don't think AI will do that for you. It's not. So I would say very much stay grounded. That's my biggest, I would say the biggest pitfall we've seen is companies just trying lots and lots of projects, spending a lot of time trying to plug AI everywhere and make cool things happen, only to realize that they have no business value and they don't further the goals of the enterprise.
Thanks.
That's all, yeah.
I'm
Well, yeah, go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say things to add there, things that you saw in your practical application of this.
Yes, my biggest shocker was that it was not translating my passion for my work, you know, and it would, you know, you could tweak the English in any way, the passion wasn't there. It was clearly missing. Another thing that really surprised me in the beginning was that I would use AI to improve something I've written. I mean, ChatGPT to improve something I've written, bring it back, and Grammarly will put all the red lines underneath it. And I'm thinking, that's your cousin, you know, why are you not, why you not liking what your cousin wrote, you know? And then you're thinking, oh my goodness, you know, and Grammarly is like, no, write it this way. ChatGPT is saying, write it this way. But at the end of the day, like we've said over and over, it's you, right? But it's my biggest shocker was that. And then I think I shared with you all in our prep session that someone had written an article on me, and I had gone back to read the article. And because I have used ChatGPT for a while, I could tell that the article was ChatGPT written about me, although it had all the salient points, right? So the person had interviewed me and had heard my story, but you could tell because the first paragraph was the same as the third paragraph, and the, you know, words were just moved around slightly, but it wasn't new information. It was just repetition after repetition. And so people can tell, you know, so my word of caution would be use it, but read through it and make the edits on your own.
I think both you and Marilyn said the same thing. If you've been dealing with kind of ChatGPT and AI for long enough, you can tell when something's been written by that, and you won't fool anybody. So I have an intern that's working for me now, and when I get information back, I'll say, you know, AI assisted, and say, yes, you know, because it gets easier and easier to tell. One of the things that I would say too is a pitfall is, and in the intern that's working for me now, I'm fine using ChatGPT or AI for, as you call it, brainstorming, or as a muse, right, or some interactive piece. But I feel that, and one of the risks that I talked to my intern was, if you just ask it for an answer and it gives you the answer, you missed all the benefit of the journey of getting that answer had you been doing some of that research yourself. So you miss out on some of that education process. So Marilyn, I think that ties to where you said this isn't the only tool. People have been doing businesses and not-for-profits for, you know, forever. You know, it is another tool in the toolbox, and hopefully, as we talked about earlier, leveling the playing field and giving an opportunity to focus on those higher value things and improve outcomes. But those are a couple of the other ones, you know, that
Can
I
I
wanted
just
to bring
add
up. Yeah,
one
sure.
thing? And this was in conversation with Amma. If you're writing grants, some grant organizations actually have detectors for people who use Gen AI to generate the grant application, and your grant application is rejected automatically. So this is where it becomes really your call on how you use generative AI. And Amma, maybe you can speak a bit more to this. How do you get around that if you're submitting a grant to a system that says no grant written by AI?
Yeah. So in that sense, the way we have gone around that is I use it to review the grant. So I would literally, so the way we do grants in our organization is we literally go into the grant application, copy all the questions, put it in a Google Doc, and our grant writer would, go in, both of us go in and we fill it out. What then I do is I go ahead and copy all of that from Google Doc and throw it into ChatGPT, all the answers. And I would ask ChatGPT to act as a grant reviewer and review. And I would also, put in, this is what we're applying for this funding for. If you were the grant writer, what would you be looking for? What are the pitfalls in this grant? And then it would spew out all the things we should have considered. And then I would sometimes just play around and say, what's wrong with what you just told me? And then it would go back and look at what it wrote and say, okay, maybe don't do this, maybe think of that, and so then I collect that information and then go back and rewrite. So don't let it write for you. I learned that the hard way. So you have to let it write, you write and let it critique what you've written. I think that's the best way to use it.
I agree, Amma. I've done some of that kind of where I bounce information off of it and then come back to me and say, to your point earlier, I give it a persona, Marilyn. Say, okay, you're a venture capitalist looking to invest. Based on this information, what are the 5 questions you still have? Right, and then it comes back to me and gives me questions, and do I have answers to them or not? So I think a couple words that I would pull out of this was interaction with it and interactive. It is not just going to spit out your final answer. So that's great. Couple more questions. I don't think we have any more in the chat. So if you haven't started with AI yet, what should you do? What's your recommendation? And Amma, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I think we are all using AI, whether we know it or not. We kind of said that in the beginning, right? So it's not the idea that you're not using it. Are you paying attention to it and how you use it and how you're leveraging that to help support the work you do? And so if you were like, let's take ChatGPT, that's the big one, and that's what people usually want to stay away from. Think of it as it could be whatever you want it to be for you, right? Your personal assistant or your brainstorming. So I'm more extroverted, so I like to think out loud. I actually form ideas when I'm speaking, and I don't always have someone next to me to brainstorm with me. And so you can use it for that. You could just use it for brainstorming and nothing else. Or you can use it as your English teacher, which is always not the best way, but sometimes it does help polish the work. And so we will give it that credit for polishing the writing. But my thought is you're already using it in so many ways without even knowing. So why stop,
Marilyn?
I would say, really just give it a try. I think people feel intimidated and think, oh, you need a degree, but like, Amma, what is your formal training in technology? Have you had any formal training?
Not at all. Just plain.
What's your major?
I have a business background and a science background, but that's it. Tech is not, even coming on the webinar today, I was like, how do you get the background to do what it needs to do, right? So I'm not tech savvy at all. I'm just curious, and I'm also a small nonprofit that is desperate to get the work done, and so that's where I go.
Yeah, and for me, that's the coolest thing about this technology is that it's very accessible to use. If you want to build your language model, you need to be an engineer. But if you want to use one, you just have to have your own thoughts and your own vision to use it. So please log in. You can use just regular login. You create it. At the beginning, it's free. But as I said, if you want to use it for like real business purposes and you see that you're going to use it long term, get a paid version that protects your data and just give it a whirl. Some people like theory before practice. There are a few LinkedIn learning trainings that I found to be really good. I'm going to paste them into the chat. I would encourage you to give them a try. They're actually really good. I was surprised how good they were. They're very accessible. They give you examples that you can actually try out yourself and they showed it to you as it plays out. That's another way that you can learn. I feel like because generative AI is such a big revolution for society, the creators of it have made accessible a lot of free training. So pick the platform of your choice. ChatGPT is not the only one. You could use Claude AI, which is with Anthropic. You could use Gemini. Literally all the big tech players have one. So pick the one you want or feel most comfortable with and just give it a try. The trainings that I've put in the chat actually apply to any model that you want to use. So they're good anyway, and they tell you about critical thinking and staying the master of the ship when using generative AI. So they're really good for that. And that's really it. I think once you stick your finger in it and you play a little bit with it, starting with scenarios that you fully control, it will then give you the confidence to try things that are more and more outside of your knowledge zone, but still really cautious and making sure that you verify that information.
Marilyn, you mentioned starting with a scenario that you fully control. Can you give an example of that? Is that where we were talking about mission statement, asking for comments on your mission statement? Okay.
Because pick an area of your business that you really fully understand. You can do it with your eyes closed. And then take what you've done and ask generative AI to critique it or ask to embellish it. Or you're about to write your monthly newsletter to your investors and your donors. You have a bunch of bullet points because you know kind of the topics you want to write about, but you've not written it out fully. Just take that, dump it into generative AI and see how far it gets you towards the newsletter you were going to write anyway, which means you have all the skills to know what good looks like. And that will allow you to really assess how good or bad the tool is in assisting you with the job.
That's great.
And just to add to that real quick, talking about newsletters, we've used it because MailChimp, which is what we use for newsletters, has an embedded AI. So a lot of those platforms like Constant Contact, MailChimp, now do have an AI component to it. So in the moment where you were in the tool typing in your newsletter, you could literally change the tone, change grammar in the system. So definitely as you go, if you're using things like Constant Contact or MailChimp, definitely look for it because there is AI now embedded in that software.
Correct.
Great. And Marilyn, you copied in those resources into the chat, is that right?
I did. Can you see them? It says meeting group chat.
Yes, I can.
Yep, we're good.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah.
Awesome. So it seems to me, summarizing just a little bit, Marilyn and Amma, when you're looking at, hey, jumping in, whether you're using it right now, whether you're not in ChatGPT, if you understand kind of the pitfalls, if you understand some of the caveats, right, start with something you know and know cold, right, so you can tell if it's good or bad. That's a good way to start, and then branch out from there. Fair?
Yes.
Perfect. One last question, then we'll hand it back to Henry for closing. Is there anything, and I think you talked about using it to kind of clarify roles within your board. Are there things within kind of standard operating procedures or your operational procedures or standardizing those that you've used it for, or Marilyn, in your work on AI? So just kind of the operational aspects of it, standardizing it, those kind of things.
Yeah, I mean, I've just used that a couple of times, not as much as I would like to, but the way so there's a couple of programs that we run, and as we grow, I wanted to be able to document our processes. And so document, for example, our eTalk Right program, what does that look like, so that if we were able to take that program and take it to, let's say, a campus chapter, which is kind of where we're heading, trying to open chapters around universities in town. Will a campus chapter be able to step in, look at this process and do it? Exactly, we would have done it in our headquarters. So For example, I threw in that program and said, this is what it takes to run the program. Can you give me some kind of standard of operation to make this work, right? And so in terms of programming, that's how I have used it to help me standardize the work so that it can be implemented in different chapters and different locations once we expand.
Yeah. We've used it similarly. It was very much an assistance of mine when I was putting together our management procedure for the enterprise of how we would approach generative AI in the context of responsible innovation. So a lot of the ideas are mine. However, writing the 12-page document that satisfies a management procedure, I couldn't be asked, honestly. So I had bullet points. I fed them bullet points. I reviewed and tweaked the outputs to make it good, and then put together management documentation. It also helps for charters. If you have a board charter that hasn't been written yet and you need to piece it together and you've never done so, you can start really basic and say, I need to write a charter for this kind of things. What are some key elements I need to cover? And it will tell you these are the chapters you need to cover. Then you take your little fingers and under each chapter, you put the bullet points of what would fit under the chapter. And then you say, can you please expand and do the write out for me? And then you go over that and you can fix it and make it your own. But you don't have to think that you have to figure everything out yourself. You can go from ideation all the way through to execution and review using an alternation of your expertise and AI, going back and forth, back and forth. So I find that, yes, it's good to help with what I find tedious work of writing, of thinking through things, giving directions that are clear. It just is a great help.
Yeah.
Great.
And,
Thank
and
you.
real quick, just to add on, I have used it also for training. So I started delving into training, groups and hosting workshops. And so we have a workshop that goes only for an hour. And the other day I had a workshop that was going for 3 hours. So I literally like copied all the things we had for 1 hour and said, how can we expand this for 3 hours? And it would throw in like activities and things related to what it thought we were doing, and I kind of took that and just tweaked it a little bit. But it's also great at coming up with like icebreakers and games. And we've used it in our board meeting for icebreakers and group activities. It would, you give it a theme and say, come up with a group activity for this amount of time and it would do it, so.
Yeah. I think one thing we have not spoken about is using video generation. There are varying qualities. So I'm not going to lie that all of them look fantastic. Critique everything. If you see people have 6 fingers and 3 ears, it may not be the quality you're looking for your company. But there are video generators out there, especially for like short clips or snippets that can really bring to life some of your presentations or your concepts, or even just your advertising or your social media stream. So I would say it's worth exploring. Make sure that you look at the terms and conditions so that you don't use inappropriately some of the outputs and the contents that it creates for you. But if you're going for a paying platform, usually you have free leisure to use it for commercial purposes.
Yeah, I've used that and used it more as to get my thoughts down visually and then share it with a creative team. Said, this is what I'm thinking, and then they take it from there. So
Yeah.
instead of just putting something in text, they actually see the vision. So I agree with you, Marilyn. Hey, I'm going to go a little bit off script here. It's not AI related, but you mentioned something. I think you said you talked about your Eat, Talk, Write program.
Yes.
Can you? I want to hear about that. So can you give us a minute on what that is?
Yeah, so like I said in the beginning, we ignite and foster cultural diversity in our community. And so we believe that engaging with culture, one of the meaningful platforms is to use food. And so we have 2 versions. We have Eat Talk Write and Eat Talk Connect. Eat Talk Write, we take kids to 9 restaurants, immigrant-owned restaurants, 9 restaurants in 3 days. And think of a food tour, but in this sense, connecting deeply with culture through food. And then the Eat Talk Connect is an adult version where we go to restaurants for 2 hours. we eat, we talk, and we connect. So the writing component is for the kids to do a restaurant review or a food review. But it's a fun way to engage with culture through food. So yeah, that's the programming one of the programs we offer.
You had me at food.
We have everyone.
I've been to a few. If you come to Richmond, please have a look to see whether there's any programming. I found it like it's just a slice of walking into someone else's country for those 2 hours. The restaurant owners usually come and they speak to us about where they're from, where they grew up, what's in the food that we're eating, and share a bit of either music, poetry, dance. It's really fun.
Great. I don't see any other questions in the chat. This was really, really informative. I think Amma and Marilyn, thank you very much for wait a minute. There we go. Henry or Randy just put something together. Thank you, Amma and Marilyn, for joining us. Henry, I'm going to give it over to you for closing, and hopefully everybody got something out of this today. Henry, back to you.
Well, thank you, Charlie, and thank you 10 times, Marilyn and Amma. What outstanding insights and perspectives on how to use AI in our daily professional lives. You know, the purpose of this webinar in the beginning, it was how do we use this tool as a force multiplier for your nonprofits? That really was the genesis of this. And I think we hit the mark. So I hope everyone listening and tuning in came away with several nuggets to really either help you scale your nonprofit or deepen the impact on your clients and stakeholders. That's really what this is all about. So this will go up on our YouTube channel, as well as at saxonadvisors.com, our website. And if anybody listening wants to have an expanded conversation around implementation and how to shift some high value activities from your portfolio to AI, certainly give us a call and we'll help you talk through it. But I want to again thank everyone, Derek, our team, and these wonderful, wonderful leaders that you see on your screen for helping us get this delivered. The Saxon Advisors Thought Leadership Series will continue on a quarterly basis, where we'll have insightful discussions around how we up-level our work as nonprofit leaders, and hope to continue wonderful discussions like this. So thank you for all that you do. And again, if we can be of service to you, please reach out. Marilyn, Amma, Charlie, appreciate all of your support today.
Appreciate you too.
And thank you guys. We'll all talk soon. Bye-bye for now.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.